Hey, what's up guys and girls? How's everybody doing today? Welcome to another episode of Dan Richard Fishing, and today we're going to be talking more about batteries. You guys remember that I did a couple of videos about how to rig batteries. We did a video about what kind of batteries to buy for your boat, and today I wanted to do one more video because you guys have sent me quite a bit of questions that I've responded to in the comment section of those videos, more centered around what kind of battery should I use for lighter craft, as well as how do I figure out how long a battery is going to last. So you guys have, let's say you've got a kayak, a canoe, an inflatable boat, some other kind of light craft, and you want to know, all right, listen, I've got a 30-pound trolling motor. How long will that trolling motor last? Or will this battery work for my chart plotter all day, or for my portable live well pump, things like that. So I thought it would be a really cool video to just discuss how to figure that out based on the ratings on the batteries. Another question I get is, how do I know how much capacity the battery has? Because batteries have a whole bunch of different terminology in terms of, the capacity of the battery. It's measured in different ways. There's different ways that companies market their batteries. So you've got, CCA, CAs, MCA, you've got reserve capacity, reserve hours, reserve minutes, all kinds of different terms. And it's like, what in the heck does all of this mean? So listen, today we're going to go through it. We're going to do some math today. Everybody, who doesn't love math? So we're going to go through it, and we're going to talk about basically how to figure this stuff out and how to make these calculations for yourself, so that way you'll know exactly how long your batteries are going to last you, okay? So let's get into it. Let's talk batteries. Okay, so first up, let's get a look at some batteries, okay? So here and here, you're going to see some batteries, and maybe just all over the screen, we're going to have different kinds of batteries, and you're going to see they all say different things. So some of them have different stats on them to try and sell them to get, to pull you in. So one of the things that you're going to see often on batteries, especially you'll see these on all automotive batteries, and you'll typically see this on marine batteries that have a kind of a dual purpose. So they're not just a deep cycle battery, they are a starting and deep cycle battery. So they're a hybrid marine battery, and in case you don't know what these batteries mean and what all this is, go and check out my what kind of battery do I need for my boat, and in there we talk about the different kinds of batteries, deep cycle versus a cranking battery, versus lithium ion batteries, versus what is a vented lead acid battery, like that. All of that's covered, okay? So make sure you go check out that video as well. So you're going to see something on these batteries that says CCA, MCA, or CA, okay? So let's talk about what those are. So we'll start off with CCA. CCA stands for cold cranking amps. Then you have CA, which is just cranking amps, and then you have MCA, which is marine cranking amps. So what the heck does that even mean? Okay, so start off with CCA. It stands for cold cranking amps. So cold obviously is implicit in the name, so that's got to be significant, and it is. Basically, cold cranking amps means how much amperage the battery can put out for 30 seconds straight when it's brand new, fully charged, when the ambient temperature is minus 18 degrees Celsius or 0 degrees Fahrenheit. So they basically crank that battery on and see how much amperage it can pull maximum for 30 seconds. That becomes your cold cranking amps. So this is measured obviously for how much power the car or the vehicle gets to turn the engine over. So typically you'll see anywhere between 650 and 850 cold cranking amps. That's pretty typical. And why cold? Well, you got northerners like us up here in Canada, and of course upstate New York, and basically the northern US, where things get a little chilly, just a smidge, like minus 30 degrees Fahrenheit. So they got to test these batteries under brutal conditions. So that's why they have cold cranking amps, okay? So that's CCA. Deep cycle batteries, pretty much completely irrelevant, so you don't even really have to worry about this, but that is what cold cranking amps are, okay? All right, next up we've got CA or MCA, so that again is cranking amps or marine cranking amps. So this is the exact same thing. It's how much power, what's the maximum amperage output for 30 seconds coming from a battery when it's brand new, fully charged, and this is the ambient temperature is now 0 degrees Celsius or 32 degrees Fahrenheit. So same test, exactly the same test, just warmer ambient temperature. So the question becomes is why would you even do that? Like why have MCA or CAs and also CCAs? What's the point? It's just marketing. So theoretically, the warmer the ambient temperature, the more power draw you can get, the more amperage you can get, the bigger the number you can put on the side of the battery. So it's just for marketing. They want to put the biggest number possible. So instead of putting cold cranking amps, which will have a smaller number, they'll put the MCA or CA number, which is higher. So that's all that is. Again, not really a concern for you guys. Maybe for a boat with a big engine that needs to pull over or turn over in colder temperature, you need to have a decent CCA rating. But again, it's mostly relevant to vehicles, cars, and things like that. I wouldn't worry about it for a boat, especially deep cycle. So if this is for your trolling motor battery, you don't care what that number is. The number that you want to care about comes next. Now here's where the money is, okay? We got to talk about amp hours, and we're going to talk about reserve hours or reserve capacity, okay? So this is stuff you will also see on the battery. Now, amp hours obviously is how many amps you can get from a battery for a set amount of hours, okay? So 100 amp hours means you can draw a total of 100 amps from the battery, and that's it, your battery's drained. So we'll get into how to calculate that, but the quick and skinny of this is that, let's say you've got a trolling motor that draws 50 amps per hour, so the draw on it is rated at 50 amps. So when you see an electronic device and you see the draw is the rating per hour. So if the draw is 50 amps, that means it draws 50 amps per hour. So if you have a battery with 100 amp hours, then you're gonna last 2 hours with that trolling motor on full blast for 2 hours straight, okay? So if you were to troll around the lake for 2 hours at full amperage, at full power, your battery will last you 2 hours. That's kind of the easy way to do it. So amp hours is sort of the end goal of what we want to know about the battery. So when we're buying a battery, you're going to want to trade off between the most amp hours as possible, but also you're going to want to, keep your weight as low as you can, especially for these smaller craft like a kayak, a canoe, or an inflatable. You're going to want to keep that weight down. When you've got a regular boat, you generally don't really care. These guys that run 36 volt trolling motors, they got 3 giant batteries, each one's 60 pounds. So this isn't really a concern. But if you're doing light craft, obviously you want to keep things as low as possible. And of course, when the video is done, you can go and check out the description. And in the description below, I'll have some links to some light batteries that I recommend. Some are priced super cheap and others are premium batteries, but we'll get into that. Let's not get ahead of ourselves, okay? Okay, so now we're going to talk about reserve capacity. Now, reserve capacity is typically calculated in reserve minutes, okay? So it's in minutes. So you could have reserve capacity, reserve hours, or reserve minutes. It's all the same thing, and industry-wide, I believe it's just simply called reserve capacity. So what is reserve capacity exactly? So reserve capacity, which like I said, is normally calculated in minutes, it's the amount of minutes that the battery can support a 25 amp draw without the voltage dropping below 10.5 volts. When the voltage of the battery drops below 10.5 volts, that's considered drained. Your battery is drained, it's done, it's going to bed, it's time to plug it into the charger, okay? So that's what the reserve minutes are. So again, reserve capacity is simply another marketing tool, because by putting the reserve minutes, it's going to be a higher number than amp hours. So amp hours could be, let's say, 100 amps, but if you were to put 100 amp hours, but if you were to put, the reserve capacity, you put that in minutes instead of hours. So obviously it's a much higher number. It looks better for those of you that are going to buy a battery and in your head is biggest number possible. That's what you're going to buy. So again, this is for marketing and to complicate our lives. So there is a way to calculate how many amp hours you can get out of that reserve capacity. So this is how you do it. And now we're going to have some fun math time. Okay. So I'll put the math up on the screen so you can follow along. And if you want to take a note, but also again, in the description below, I'm going to have links to everything we're going to talk about. So I'll have links to the resources for amperage draw on trolling motors, how to calculate watts and all that good stuff. We're going to get into that. And also how to figure out how to calculate reserve capacity into amp hours. So I'll have links to all that, but this is how you do it. Now, before we get into the calculation, there's one little piece of information that it's not really something you need to know off the top of your head, but it's something that you need to know for the calculation process, okay? So there's a unit of measure, and I'm apologizing if I'm not pronouncing this correctly, but they're called coulombs. And coulombs, it's C-O-U-L hopefully I'm spelling that right. They are used to calculate the amount of charge in a battery, okay? So this is a unit of measure for a charge of a battery. So it's relevant because we're going to use this in our calculation, okay? So let's go through the calculation. I'm going to pull this up on the screen now. So the first thing you need to do is multiply the reserve capacity by 60 to convert it into seconds. So for example, if a battery offers a 100-minute capacity, well then you're going to do 100 times 60, which equals 6,000 seconds. The next thing you're going to do is multiply this length of time by 25. And if you guys remember, that's how the reserve capacity is calculated, is the draw of 25 amps over time. So how long can it support that 25 amp draw? So that's why we use 25. So the example here is we now have 6,000 seconds, and then we're going to multiply it by 25, so that's 150,000. This is the number of coulombs of charge in the battery. So we talked about coulombs and how that measures the charge in the battery, so this is the number that you have in this example. Now you just divide that by 3,600, which is the number of coulombs in an amp hour, okay? So that's how you calculate that. So divide by 3,600. So again, in our example, we've got 150,000 coulombs. We're going to divide it by 3,600, which is the amount of coulombs in an amp hour, and that gives us 41.67 hours. So that is the amount of amp hours you have in that battery, and that's how you do this conversion, okay? So again, the idea is to get the amp hours for the battery rating, and that's how you get it. So it's either written the amp hours directly on there, or we use this calculation to figure out the reserve capacity and convert it into amp hours, okay? Okay, next up we're going to talk about how do we use this information now. So a great example that I've answered so many times is the trolling motor equation, okay? So trolling motors all have a maximum draw of amperage, and pretty much every manufacturer will have it listed. So just because I happen to have a Minn Kota Tarova, we're going to use the Minn Kota stats. So we're going to pull up on the screen now. This is a list of the trolling motor draws, and you know, this basically shows you on this chart what kind of gauge you're supposed to use, what kind of circuit breaker, and I've referenced to this chart many times. Again, link in the description below for this, and you can see the max amp draw column. So for a 30-pound trolling motor, it'll draw 30 amps, and for an 80-pound like I do, it'll draw a maximum of 56 amps. Now you got to bear in mind that this is the maximum draw, okay? This isn't what it always draws. Like if you've got that trolling motor set to a 5, which is half power, you're going to use about half that draw. So instead of 56, let's say you're going to be at 30 amps. So keep that in mind when you're calculating, because you want to stay realistic, right? Yes, these are the maximum amp draws that we're going to be using, but at the same time, you're not going to be drawing that the entire time. You're not going to be sitting on your trolling motor at power 10 for 3 hours straight. You're going to take your boat, you're going to get to where you want to be, and then you're going to, then you're going to use your trolling motor to tool around. If you're going to use your kayak, then yes, you might have your kayak out, you've got that setting on half, and you're using it to, let's say it takes you 30 minutes to get to where you want to be, and you're going to be paddling at the same time, so you won't necessarily be drawing the full amperage. And then when you get there, you're assuming you're going to drift, you're going to move around, like you're not going to be sitting on that trolling motor at full power the entire time. So bear that in mind. So when we do these calculations and you've got 2 hours of power for that battery based on this calculation, you got to figure that that's 2 hours straight maximum output with your foot on the pedal, which you don't do when you're fishing typically, right? So unless you're trolling with the dang thing, and even then you won't be trolling at full power. So bear that in mind. So 2 hours of actual use time may translate into 5 hours of fishing time. So just bear that in mind, because if you try to get a battery that can run a trolling motor for 8 hours straight at maximum power, you better get ready, because you're going to be running a heck of a lot of batteries in parallel, okay? So anyway, let's get into the calculation, okay? So we'll go back to the sheet here. Okay, so let's pretend we're going to use the first trolling motor, which is the 30-pound thrust one with 30 amps of draw. So next up on the screen, you're going to see a formula, and again, I'll link to the formula, don't worry about it. And this formula is going to show you guys how to calculate your running time based on your amp hours, okay? So first of all, You'll notice that on this calculator, it's adding a little bit of a complication, and it's the 85% rule. And it's kind of realistic because you were assuming that your battery is going to be 100% new, 100% charged, and you're not even really supposed to draw your batteries dead completely in the first place. It's really bad for the battery. You're actually only supposed to draw your batteries down, regular lead acid batteries, about 50%, to be honest with you. I don't know that everybody adheres to that. That's kind of the ideal world. So anyway, they're using this calculation with the 85% rule. So basically they're taking 85% to give you some safety buffer on your amp hour. So that's why in the calculation on Minn Kota, that's why they use that 85%. Okay, so let's look at it again. So basically you're going to take the amp hour rating. So in this case, in this example, you can see they're using a 120 amp hour battery. And then we only want to use 85% of that. So we're going to multiply it by 0.85. Then we're going to take that final number and we're going to divide it by the draw of the trolling motor, which is 30 amps. So you're going to do 120 times 0.85, and then you're going to divide that number by 30, and that gives us 3.4 hours in this example. So with a 120 amp hour battery at 85% use, with a 30 amp, which is a 30-pound thrust trolling motor, you will get 3.4 hours of full-time use, maximum draw from that battery. And so I would say for any light craft, that will easily last you the entire day. If you're, if you're able to draw out that battery, the whole day, maybe the only thing where I can see it is, let's say you don't use a kayak or a canoe, and you're, and you're not paddling, and you're relying on that motor the entire time, and there's current and stuff like that, and you've got a long, you're going to be going a long way. So let's say like a little inflatable boat. If you're going to use a little inflatable boat, and you're going to be leaning on that trolling motor the entire time, then you're going to be in trouble. And to be honest with you, 120 amp hours is pretty big. That's a big battery. That's not a small battery. Lighter batteries, unless you're getting lithium ion, which, obviously the cost comes with that, they're going to last you like 50, 60 amp hours. So you have to consider that if you want to run an inflatable boat, you're going to want to probably get a full-size battery. All right, just bear that in mind, especially if you're going to be doing long runs with it. If you're just going to use it on a small little lake where the run to your spot is 20 minutes, then you're fine. Then you have no issues. So, but just bear that in mind, okay? So that's exactly how you calculate the amp hours and how long a trolling motor will last. And you just apply this same formula for any trolling motor out there. You can find the amperage draw on every single one. And you'll notice that this calculator also shows you how to calculate how much speed you'll get out of your battery. So you can see that here. It's got an equation. We won't go through it, but the page is referenced in the description below, so you can go check that out if you want to try that calculation. Okay, so we figured out how to calculate your reserve hours and how to calculate how long it'll last with your trolling motor. Let's talk about smaller electronics. So smaller electronics such as pumps. Let's say you've got pumps, you've got your radio, you've got your graphs, you've got your chart plotter, you've got your fish finder, all that good stuff. Smaller electronics. They don't always come with the amperage draw. Sometimes they typically come in watts. So let's use an example of a 93 SV. So we're going to use an EchoMap, a Garmin EchoMap 93 SV fish finder / chart plotter / graph, however you want to call it. When you look these up on the site, they will show you in watts. So now you're like, great, I just learned all about amps and amp hours and all that, and now they're throwing watts at me. Now what do I do? Well, it's really easy. Again, we're going to use a little bit of math, okay? So very, very easy. You just simply take the amount of watts divided by the voltage of your system, and that's your amps. So let's run an example up right there. Right there? Yeah, looks good. So basically you're going to take the watt output. So the wattage output for the EchoMap is 18 watts, okay? So it consumes 18 watts of power per hour. We're going to divide it by 12 because we're using a 12-volt battery, and that gives us 1.5. So that's your amps. It draws 1.5 amps per hour. Easy peasy Japanesey. So then you can, again, do the same division that we did. So if you've got, let's say, a 150 amp hour battery, and you were to run a 1.5 amp unit like the EcoMap, then you've got literally 100 hours that you can run that thing without ever charging your battery. So as you could, this is what I was talking about before. You don't have to worry about smaller electronics. They will easily run your stuff all day. There's no issues there. It's more the trolling motors that you got to be concerned about. But that is how you convert it. And again, I'll put a link to an easy calculator if you want to be lazy and you don't want to figure out the math. There's a calculator online where you can just punch in the wattage, put in your voltage, and poof, out it comes, and you're good to go. So that's it, guys. That's how you calculate that. Okay, guys, that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed the video. So I hope this is very, very helpful, because I know that shopping for a battery can be very confusing. And as well as, what are all these different terms? You know, marketing teams are always looking for the best way to sell batteries, and they know the general message out there is bigger is better. The bigger number, the better it gets, and which is true, but you need to understand that bigger numbers can be represented in different ways. So just because you see 100 on a battery and 1,000 on another, it doesn't necessarily mean that one battery is better than the other until you put the common denominator, which is convert everything into amp hours. So once you've got everything to amp hours, that's where it becomes, you know, kind of useful information for you to calculate how long things are going to last. I do think that bigger is better, obviously, but for some of you guys with lighter craft, you know, you're walking out in the middle of the woods and it's not feasible to lug a 60-pound battery around. You know, I get that. That makes complete sense. So what I'm going to do is, in the description below, I'm going to go through a couple of batteries that I can recommend that will last, you know, several hours of fishing for you guys with a small little trolling motor or to run your electronics. And these will be, you know, batteries that are priced pretty cheap, right up to a premium optimum battery, which weighs only like 25 pounds, and it's got over 60 amp hours, which is phenomenal for a battery that weighs 26 pounds. But if you guys need to go full charge, you know, you need that 120 or the, you know, 100 amp hour battery, because you're going to be running on a larger lake, purely on electric trolling motor, and you're going to be tooling around all over the place. You know, if your budget allows, you might have to go to a lithium ion, because lithium ion batteries only weigh 20 pounds, but you get the same amount of amp hours and maybe even more than you would with a 60-pound standard lead acid battery, which is super impressive. So I'll put some options in the link below, and you can check it out. But I hope this really helps. So now you can figure out exactly how long your battery is going to last, and yeah, and then you won't be fooled by those little marketing ploys, and you'll understand what all those numbers mean and all those terms on the batteries. Okay, guys? So I hope you guys have been enjoying these tip videos. You know, it's been difficult for me lately to find time to go out there and fish. I've got a lot of work on my plate, both in terms of my full-time job as well as around the house. You know, I'm building a new shed right now. For those of you that don't follow me, check out my Instagram. It's just Dan Richard Fishing on Instagram. On my stories, I post little updates on my shed construction. So I'm building my own shed, and I'm also going to be repairing a deck that's completely rotten on the back of the house. So I've been really, really busy this summer. It's been very hard for me to go out and fish. Believe me, it's very frustrating. So it's a bit easier for me to film these how-to videos, and you know, I do them based on the questions that you guys send. So this is all stuff that you guys have been asking me, so I hope you did find this helpful. And of course, if you like these videos, don't forget to hit the thumbs up button, and of course, you better make sure you subscribe. Don't forget, smash the subscribe button. And if you have any more questions or anything like that, you know, just drop me a comment and all that good stuff. So I hope this was helpful, and I look forward to showing you guys some more fishing, sharing some more tips, and all that good stuff. So guys, listen, thank you so much for your support. Again, the channel's been growing, you know, faster than ever. I really, really appreciate it, and I'm looking forward to paying you guys back with some goodies I got coming up. We're gonna do some giveaways, some draws. I'm just trying to finalize some things in between all the work that I'm doing, and yeah, so that's it, guys. Thank you so much. I really, really appreciate it, and I will see you guys on the next video, all right? Have a great day. Stay safe, stay sane, stay healthy, all that good stuff. Get out there and go fish and enjoy the rest of your summer. Peace.